Some of the changes that are quite dramatic that have happened in the last 15 years in the UK have been, recently falls in life expectancy. Mortality has actually gone up. We've had people delaying birth to incredible ages, way past 30 now for first births. We've seen migration at levels that have never been seen before, much higher than the levels after the famine in Ireland. So many things are new and so much is changing. It really is a very different map of the country that we now draw. At the same time as you're getting incredible demographic and social change and lots of immigration and lots of mixing, inequalities are rising rapidly. There was an acceleration after the 2008 crash. The best off 1% take 14% of all income, the rest of 10% take another 14%, that makes 28%. That is a higher proportion than in any other country in Europe. We are now the most economically unequal country in Europe, and if things carry on as they are, we'll become the most economically unequal country in the rich world in the next 10 years or so. And we can also become acclimatized to extreme inequality. You feel it's normal to be living like this. You feel it's normal for some people to have so much and others to have so little. In particular, children who are brought up in a country with very high inequality don't see it as strange. Whereas for somebody of my age, it is strange because this was a very different country when I was a child. I've been showing a lot of these statistics to policymakers and to politicians. A lot of them aren't known. I mean, a lot simply are trends that people are not aware of or they don't understand. For instance, in Scotland, there's been an 8.5% increase in absolute mortality. That's actually huge. That's the biggest increase there's been since the Second World War. And mortality normally goes down. But you can't just say an 8.5% increase. I know that's massive. I have to find a way of explaining this is incredible, it's terrible. And although most of it is elderly people dying in their early 80s rather than their late 80s, it still matters, and you have to explain that as well. The rise in mortality in England and Wales and the rise in Scotland will have a series of causes. The immediate causes will be that somebody died of a respiratory disease or of dementia, and then just behind the immediate cause will be the fact that they turned up at hospital and there was nobody to care for them for 4 hours. But behind that, there's a question about why did they end up going to hospital? What was wrong with them? And then behind that, there was the person who stopped visiting them for 15 minutes every week because that was cut. And then behind that is a budget cut. And so there's cause behind cause behind cause behind cause, but these can be unravelled. And that unravelling is beginning now and it will happen. But you also need people who can do more subtle things, who understand why a home visit of 15 minutes might actually be of some value when it's, before they were cut, people said, what use can it be? Well, if you find somebody lying at the bottom of the stairs but still breathing, it's useful. If you could only just take over off your coat and make a cup of tea and put your coat on, you might think it's not useful. Meals on Wheels, they've been slashed across the country. It wasn't just the food, it was the companionship and the fact that somebody cared. And what sociologists can do is look at these much more complicated things that are much harder to pin down about why, when the fabric of society begins to break, that has implications which aren't immediately obvious. It's great to come to an event like this as a geographer who I don't normally actually get to speak to sociologists and to say these are things that are preoccupying me and also to hear what things are preoccupying people in sociology. It's very easy to talk to people in your own little silo and there is so much that needs to be done, particularly about recent events because it's as dramatic as the 1929 crash and the 1930s Great Depression, but we're living through it now. Some amazing work was done back then by social scientists, some of which actually changed world economic policy. You know, these times of incredible social change are times when you really do need social scientists. I didn't begin by researching inequality. I began wanting to create electronic digital maps. I'm old enough that I got one of these first, at university, one of the first computers which didn't have a green screen, where you could actually, you know, and I was excited by visualizing pictures of people. I then drew pictures of the country and how it's changing over time, and inequality was rising. I did it again 10 years later, it was rising again, and it just gets to a point, when I got book reviews, which criticised some of my early work and said, what is the point of describing something when you can't explain it? And I took the review seriously. You know, this was becoming a fairly simple description. You know, it wasn't so complicated you need to carry on describing and describing it. the country was splitting apart, the social classes were splitting apart, the wealth was splitting apart, and just drawing another set of maps of that 10 years later didn't seem to be enough, and that's why I got into trying to understand why inequality is widened.